All right, it's a major crackdown by the Canadian government, which has now officially designated India's Lawrence Bishnoi gang as a terrorist entity under its criminal code. The move links the gang to acts of violence and terror that have targeted specific communities, creating an atmosphere of fear and intimidation. This development follows high-level security talks held in New Delhi just weeks ago between India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval and his Canadian counterpart Nathalie Drouin. While this action is being touted as a tough stance on terrorism, intel sources argue it exposes a deeply selective approach by Ottawa, which continues to offer a safe haven to Khalistanis separatists and the groups known for their violent and anti-India activities, not just in Canada but also in India. In fact, it's also been labelled as a selective ban by Ottawa, as anti-India extremism is being ignored by Canada. Canada has failed to act on the Khalistan network. It's shifting blame on India rather. India is seeking action against Khalistan separatists, not just a selective ban. Canada's safe haven for Khalistan goons is a bigger threat than the Lawrence Bishnoi gang. That's been the Indian perspective so far. There's action against the Bishnoi gang after pressure from their own officers as well. Canada diluting India's complaints after Khalistan elements have been red flagged by India numerous times in various dossiers presented earlier as well. There's a bid to shift perception, portray India as a terror exporter. Is Mark Carney's government giving in to domestic pressure coming in from the opposition? Now, there's an attempt to undermine India's counter-terror diplomacy as well. There are multiple dossiers that have been presented by the Indian side which have been ignored by the Canadian government. But are things that bad, or is there a reset happening? Let's take that forward with my guest today. I'm joined in by Mr. Kash Heed, who is a former Public Safety Minister of Canada. Many thanks to you, Mr. Heed. I want to begin by this meeting of the foreign ministers of both the countries that happened on the sidelines of UNGA. Dr. Jaishankar also welcomed the commissioners of both the countries as he met with Foreign Minister Anita Anand. What are your hopes for the beginning of this reset that we are witnessing ever since Prime Minister Modi visited Canada at the behest of Prime Minister Carney on the sidelines of G7?
Well, I think over the last 8 months, we've started to see a mending of the differences that took place between India and Canada with respect to bilateral agreements and arrangements that have been in place for over 75 years. And I think the discord that occurred, I believe, over in April of 2023, 2024, were very, very concerning with respect to ensuring we have not only diplomatic relationships with India, in that we can ensure that we are working together collectively, whether it's on trade or other economical gains between both countries. The diaspora in Canada is very close to India, as you can imagine, and we've got to make sure that we capitalize on that, we build on that, we certainly mend the differences that we've had and come together and look forward to a future working together.
So, Mr. Heed, given the federal opposition leader Pierre Poilievre in Canada and the British Columbia Premier David Eby and Alberta's Premier Danielle Smith were all demanding that the federal government in Canada declares the Bishnoi gang as a terrorist organization, is the listing of the gang as a terror entity a result of consistent political pressure on the Carney government coming in from the opposition?
I believe it is, and it's internal pressure that's coming from some of these political leaders, again, that are really misunderstanding what are problems related to some of the South Asian extortions that are taking place, and the fact that they can point to outside of this country as those being responsible for it. For example, in Canada, we have 88 groups that are listed as terrorists, including Mexican drug cartels and all that. We have had very little success in dealing with some of the assets that they may have or properties they may have. Matter of fact, we have more illicit drugs coming into Canada from Mexico than we've ever had before. So although you can have a feel-good announcement from a political position that this is what you're doing, at the end of the day, it's not going to make much difference at the ground level when we have our South Asian community experiencing crimes against them.
We are looking at a restart of trade talks between India and Canada. Given the current disturbances caused by Donald Trump's tariffs, how important is it for India and Canada to not just restart these trade talks, but also forge stronger trade ties?
Critically important. Absolutely critically important. I think at the end of the day, the economy is going to be one of the most important things, not only in India, but in Canada. And I think if we can develop those close trade relationships where both countries can prosper because of that, better off we're going to be. But let's keep all of this, what I call noise, aside on the separatist movements. When we talk about terrorist groups of someone that's been in jail for a decade and all that, that's just noise. And we've got to make sure that that noise does not influence or interfere with some of the most important things, especially when we talk about progress and the economy with both countries.
Many thanks to you, Mr. Heed, for joining in on World 360. It was a pleasure having you on the show.